All right, so we're going to be going through the concept called space advantage, and it's going to be easy to tell why it's so important and how it affects activity of both players' pieces and abilities to create an attack. We're going to see that through a game. The names are not important, the opening name is not important, but it's that concept and how well it was conducted, how well it really turned out important and decided the game overall. So white opened with e4, we got e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, bishop c5. So we got an Italian game. As I said, it's not that much important. The focus is not on the opening. But at this point already, when white plays c3, we're kind of saying, well, we're interested as white to gain space and central control because the idea is to push d4 next move. And by doing so, if black allows, of course, we're going to be having definitely more space than black. Knight f6, black is kind of saying, well, you're not going to go with that because the pawn on e4 is hanging. So kind of black is asking us to play d3 instead of d4. However, this guy doesn't really go for d3 the way the opponent wants, but plays d4 instead, saying, actually, well, you can take my pawn if you want to, but you're going to lose your bishop. And black is just taking the pawn on d4, and after c takes d is saying, well, you're attacking my bishop indeed, but I can run away with the bishop to b4, checking your king, and now once you defend your king, I'm gonna go and take your pawn on e4. Just quickly to go back and see what happens in case the bishop goes back to b6, because it's gonna really underline the importance of having a lot more space and how well it can work for us. If you're thinking about this, like what can we do with these pawns that are securing space advantage and central control for us? Well, there is a way just to push them forward and kick the knights of black backwards. Like d5, the knight goes back to b8. Well, okay, it can go to a5 as well, but it's not going to be that much great after we just pull the bishop back and then there is a threat of trapping the knight. Let me show you that. Let's say black passes the move, we play b4, winning this knight on the rim of the board. So let's say the knight instead goes to b8, and then we can see the other knight can also be kicked away with e5, and it goes back to g8, and then you look at these pieces of black, it's terrible, of course. So we'll be going back. We're going back to this situation where black decided to go for a right move, which is bishop b4 check, expecting the bishop d2 move, and after trading these bishops, the knight is defending e4, looks everything like perfect for white. We are going to use these pawns after and destroy black's position. However, black has a beautiful move that is a theoretical one, and most of you probably know about it, but the move that is fighting against the white center and space control and domination that white has is going to be partially destroyed by playing d5, of course, attacking both of these. White is kind of forced to take, thus losing one of those two beautiful pawns in the center. And this when this happens, of course, knight takes back on d5, and we have, as black, no problem here. Actually, white has an isolated pawn on d4. Okay, this was an intention of black, but white decided to just go with knight c3 and say, well, you can take my pawn on e4 if you want to, but I'm going to castle after, and once you take on c3, I'm going to take with the pawn. After your bishop c3, I'm going to go with bishop a3, and just look at this. Threats everywhere, queen e2, rook e1, and it's going to be over soon in case black is not really aware of this theoretical line. Actually, it is a theoretical line and it can be played this way as well. But that was actually one of the best things black could do here. Instead, we had black playing a really dubious move, which normally is not dubious. In many other cases is not. Black just castled, thinking, well, why not to get my king to safety and then just continue. Well, maybe I'm threatening the pawn on e4, so you need to defend it. And I'm gonna find a way to fight against your two great pawns, and I'm gonna try to destroy your space advantage after. Pillsbury had one really interesting here, and it goes this way: castle because you want to or because you must, but not because you can. Here seems like black castle because he could, and then of course you will see a disaster is coming. Disaster that starts with the move d5, hitting one of the knights. The knight goes to e7 because, well, of course, if it goes to b8, it would be terrible. In case of a5, we just pull the bishop back to d3 and the knight is out of game like this. It's really not doing anything and it has no good squares to go to. b8 is terrible, as we said. The knight e7 is going to be most likely the most logical move here, and it's both played in the game. And now let's look at it. What can we do with these two pawns? We have great space advantage, we have great control of the center, but can we get more than that? Well, we can if we push the pawn to e5, kicking the other knight, and it has no good square to go to. If it goes to g4, we just kick it with h3, and I don't know where it's gonna go after that. It goes to h6, we just take it and destroy their castle position. If they go to e8, it would be really ugly at first, but it can get uglier after, let's say, a couple more moves like this. Let's say the knight goes to g6, and just for the purpose of creating this picture soon, let's say this is something that happens. We go with queen d5 just for the sake of showing how these all pieces are out practically of play. The knight is not really able to go anywhere except back to h8. According to the computer engine, actually, it's one of the best moves for black. And just look at that situation. It's really picturesque. Seeing almost all of black's pieces standing on the back rank, almost all of them being stuck there, actually, because the knight from e8 cannot go anywhere, the rook cannot go anywhere, the knight can only go back to g6 where it was before, the bishop cannot really move at all, the queen maybe can use one or two squares, and the rook on a8 only one. So it's really drastically decreased activity of pieces of black after this sequence where white's pawns actually took a lot of space and pushed the opponent's pieces backwards. Total domination by white. Now let's go back, because black decided not to go for this, and you may actually understand better their move knight e4, using the spin on knight on c3, and thinking, well, now white needs to be defensive. And indeed, white went with the queen to c2, attacking the knight, but after knight takes c3 and b takes c3, now black needs to react again with the bishop, thus losing time, which is in this kind of positions really important, because black would really like to get something against those two pawns on white and regain some space and thus regain activity of pieces, maybe even develop them finally. But now after b takes c3, black needs to react with the bishop, which goes to c5. The move that we're going to see now, which is knight g5, shows really that we are ready to attack already after 12 moves. While black is kind of constricted a lot, and now they need to already react on checkmate threats. In case of g6, we'd probably go with just h4, h5, and after opening this h file, the rook involves, and the black's king is another problem here for black. So we had knight g6, defending against checkmate threat, after which again white went for h4, with the idea clearly is h5, kicking the knight away, and then delivering mate on h7. Black responded with the move h6, but what else to do here? So after h6, we had, well, a move that really shows how you can use your space advantage, and specifically the pawns, to gain more space, more activity, and, well, speed up your attack. That's the move d6. Playing d6 is coming as a measure against development of the black's light square bishop on one side. On the other side, it's more concrete reason for this move, because we are opening this bishop to pin the pawn on f7, after which we are threatening queen g6 and then mate on h7. And black played h take g5, taking the knight. White just responded by taking with the pawn. We can also take on g6 instead, and it would be winning. After that, we can take on g5 and it's game over. But we had h take g instead, and we're still threatening queen g6 and then mate along the h-file. Black is completely lost, but will follow the game moves. Rook e8. The king needs more space, so he thought like this is the way to do it. But then queen just collects the knight on g6. Checkmate is waiting for black's king. Queen h7, queen h8, and that's unstoppable. Other than that, there is queen f7 mate. So black played just rook e5 check, and after king f1, there is nothing to do, and they just resign because of queen f7, as we said, and queen h7, queen h8 threat mate. It is a nice example of how quick the attack can be when you have a lot of space not allowing the opponent's pieces to become active, and also when you have a lot of space, helping your pieces to develop greater activity. By knowing this, by getting to know this kind of things, you'd also start to understand the reasons for those opening moves. First move e4, it's kind of played with a certain relation to this topic because we're gaining a lot of space in the center. We're about to play d4 if black allows us to do that. We're creating those kind of circumstances in which our pieces are going to be standing really well, very active, and thus prepared for the attack.